I've thought about Holocaust survivors as people who had tattoos on their arms, people who had been in extermination camps. Stories like the Tehran Children were not included in any kind of official ceremony or commemoration or storytelling or even museums. My father was an enigmatic, unknown entity in my life. Growing up, I knew that my father belonged to this group called the Tehran Children, which for me, growing up in Israel, meant that they were actually not Holocaust survivors. I didn't know anything. And it's not just students and teachers who don't know it. I mean, even scholars don't know it. Something was missing in my life, some anchoring of my identity. I wanted to see what really happened in Iran during the Holocaust. My father was born in a Polish town called Ostromazowiecka, which was a small, fairly Jewish town. The family had been there for 8 generations at least. They were wealthy, kind of upper middle class. They were influential. On September 1st, 1939, the Nazis invaded Poland and the Soviets invaded soon after. So Jews basically had to decide what to do. Are they going to stay with the Germans or go to the Soviet side? And it wasn't an obvious choice at the time. It's only an obvious choice in retrospect. My father's town was the first mass execution of Jews in Poland. Poland before the war was the largest Jewish community in the world. 90% of those people will not be alive in 1945. My father and his sister, 2 children who basically never left their hometown, flee to the Soviet border, flee the Nazis, and escaped. In June 1940, they were deported to a slave labor camp in Russia. My father just turned 13, so he worked cutting down trees at temperature of minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit with basically no food. Many, many people die. It's a complete loss of everything. After 14 months, they are released. They basically go through a second exile to Central Asia, and from there continue on to Iran. After the Nazi invasion, there's a fear that Iranian oil will fall to the German side, and the Allies decide to invade Iran. So when my father comes to Iran, it's controlled by the Allies. These children look in very bad state. Regular people buy them candy or bring them apples. Iran is a much better place than they were in before. Iran has Jewish refugee aid, and there is sun, and there is food, and they're cared for. With all these refugees and all the Allies' army, it becomes a very cosmopolitan place, and it's a kind of consequence of this refugee story that it becomes a meeting place of a lot of different Jewish communities and also non-Jewish communities. It's certainly the first time these Ashkenazi European Jews encounter Mizrahi or Middle Eastern Jews. Now Iran and Israel are sort of arch enemies, but that was not the case. Tehran had a lot of religious freedoms. The impression is very positive. It's like a wondrous place where a group of children were saved from the Holocaust. A lot of the stories that we learn about the Holocaust are stories about absolute evil and absolute victimhood. How do we define the scope of the Holocaust? Does it include only people who were under Nazi occupation in Europe, or does it include the story of the refugees who ended up also in many different places? My contribution is to bring into question, who do we call survivor?